I'm Alice Cooper, and you're watching Ace Odds.
And I'm Joe Perry, and I'm sitting next to Alice Cooper.
Ace Odds, let's play your life and here we go.
How'd you hold up to them?
Well, I mean, Robbie Krieger was telling a story one time. He says, we were in Portland, Oregon. We were opening for him in a theater. He says, and you and Jim were hanging from the balcony to see who could hold on the longest. It's after a bottle of VO and a bottle of, and I don't even remember that. I mean, this is like a blank to me. And he said, I remember it very specifically because we had to pull you guys up. But when people say, well, Jim, died at 27, that's really early. I said, if you would have known Jim, getting to 27 was a miracle. I mean, the fact that he got to 27, he would take pills the way that we would eat Skittles, And so I was not surprised when I heard that he died because I think he was living on borrowed time for a long time,
No, I mean, it's been decades, right, since all of this. I mean, there is still that sadness, though, right?
There is, and at the same time, their music sits there. We learned from them, and so now it's time for us to kind of pick up and say, well, let's just give one more tribute to these guys. And there's a lot of young bands out there that have never heard of the Doors. There's bands out there that have never heard, that are just hearing Jimi Hendrix for the first time, and you're going, well, we're going to kind of bring them back to life for a while.
When Metallica was inducted to the Hall of Fame, they had Jimmy Page, and I think Jeff was getting inducted too, Jeff Beck, and me come up to play with Metallica, and the song was "Train Kept A-Rollin'." Metallica didn't know it. They did not know "Train Kept A-Rollin',"
which was Rock and Roll 101 for us.
I mean, that
if you didn't know that song, you didn't play a club.
It was like a drummer not knowing Wipeout. You know what I mean? It's like, me and Jimmy and Jeff kind of looked at each other like, okay, well, we'll have to run through the song for them, and they had the teleprompter, and of course it was no pun but intended, but it was a train wreck after Jeff brought in the train, we made it through it, but it just showed that the generations, a generation in rock and roll can be 2 years. I mean, like Alice said, we learned from these guys, even though they were maybe a couple of years older than us, maybe even younger, but just something about the water in England. I don't know. They pick shit up fast there. Mm-hmm. And I can remember the band the English band that we learned from on our first real tour opening was Martha Hoople.
Yeah.
And they were the first English band that kind of took us under their wing. There were a lot of English bands weren't that. There was a lot of competition. I mean, we opened for the Kinks twice, and then they threw us off the bill. It was tough. The competition was a lot different then. But Martha Hoople, they were great guys, and we learned a lot from them. I mean,
and they were glam. I mean, to me,
yeah,
all the way to Memphis, it's like, I can't hear that without thinking about it being the beginning of the glam thing.
Yeah.
Had that attitude, all the way to Memphis. I mean, that was just, come on, that's pure glam,
Let me ask you guys, I mean, you're mentioning Metallica doesn't know a song, which makes me really scared about the current bands that are out there that don't know their shit. I mean,
here's an interesting one. There's a band called the Stripes from Ireland.
Yep.
18 years old. And they sound like the Yardbirds and the Small Faces combined.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But as authentic as anything I've ever heard in my life. There's every single song is like, are you kidding me? This band, Jeff Beck knows who they are. Jimmy Page. Everybody listens to these guys going, if there's reincarnation, it's these guys. Because they're 18, and I'm telling you, this album called Snapshot. Mm-hmm. I tell every young band, listen to this album. Because it should have been done in 1966, this album.
Huh.
I'm telling you, it's the most authentic thing I've ever heard. And these kids are just 18-year-old Irish kids that play. They get up and they play. It's amazing. So there is hope. Hopefully right now there's 15, 16-year-old kids in a garage learning Train Kept a Rolling,
Yeah.
and learning Walk This Way, and learning School's Out and stuff like that. Hard rock,
Yeah.
because as it is now, there's a lot of anemic stuff going on
Oh,
out there.
man.
It's so anemic.
Yeah.
It's just.
Well, and that's the thing, like, I just have a couple more questions, but, so Dave Grohl, I think, has been elected, and he's on the record, kind of the patron saint of rock and roll right
Yeah.
now. So mainstream, it's David Grohl. But when you start going below that, you kind of you fall short after maybe 2 or 3 more names.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
But in this day and age, does it matter? Does it have to be mainstream? Because you can get music,
Yeah.
any which way. I mean, you have to do more digging, obviously.
I feel
to
sorry
find
for
it.
young bands today because there's just no support for them. There's just record companies don't
so
support.
tough.
When they signed,
Yeah.
when we signed, they wanted 20 albums, and they were gonna sustain your life for 20 albums because they believed in the band. The head of the record company would be at your recording studio talking about lyrics. That's never going to happen again because it's
Yeah.
just the technology has kind of killed that off. And I feel sorry for young bands now that are good young bands because they don't have any future.
There's no way. I have 4 boys, and 2 of them had a band together, and they really, really good songwriters. I mean, and they put on a great show, and they did not want to be rock stars. They didn't want. They were doing everything they said they didn't want to do. They didn't want to be rock stars. They didn't want anything to do with that stuff. But they still got up on stage and rocked, and they were really good. But they just couldn't get the
No support.
the record deal, the
Yeah.
money, the whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I helped them every way I could.
Just tap the band.
Without
Nobody's looking for the next great band.
Yeah.
My son's the same thing. He's got his own band, and I said, 1975, you would have been signed like that. I said, you write
Yeah.
great songs, your band rocks hard. I said, you'd have been signed like that. Everybody's looking for the new Miley Cyrus.
yeah.
And they find them.
I said, nothing against Miley Cyrus, but I mean, nobody's looking for the next great Led Zeppelin,
My son one of them worked at Epic after he graduated from Stanford. We gave him 2 years off, and he worked for Epic down here for 2 years as an A&R guy. And he said that every Thursday they would have a meeting, and they'd all sit around the table, and whatever anybody heard, or if they had something, usually it was 3 or 4 songs, and every person would get their chance to play what they had, and they would get 30 seconds to play each thing, and it was either this or this, and mostly it was this.
Yeah.
And my son had, in the 2 years he worked there, 4 bands that got turned down, got signed by other labels, and then he quit. And then the band went, their band went on a little bit longer, and then they
And then
stopped.
So last question, because I'm sitting next to, 2, well, whatever, I'm not gonna blow smoke up your ass, you don't need anyone to do that. So I have an 8-month-old at home. Any words of wisdom that you can impart to him so I could play it back in 15 years to keep him in line a little bit?
Oh, man, I always told my kids this: make a mistake, I can handle that. Make a mistake with attitude, and there's a problem.
That's a good one.
That works?
That's good. Just don't push it.
Yeah, don't
Past
throw
the
the
limit.
attitude at me, like, what are you going to do about it? And none of my kids ever did that. They were always kind of, I blew it. And I go, okay, I can deal with that. But it was never, I blew it, what are you going to do about it? I never had that attitude with them, which is great. Of course, my kids couldn't rebel. What are they going to do?
Well,
Come
yeah,
home with
really.
like blue hair and, and eye makeup and
No shit.
I
Yeah,
invented
like,
that.
so
What
what?
do you-
I
Yeah.
did that 15 years ago.
The worst thing they can do is come home and say, "Hey, Dad, you hear this new song by?" And I go, "Oh my gosh, no, don't do this to me."
Guys, good luck. Hopefully you'll do more dates
Oh, yeah.
as it goes along. But
Let's
thanks.
see how it
People are
goes.
already asking for more dates, and we haven't done the first 3 yet. So I'm glad about that.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.